There is something rare, something most people never see. A man who refuses, not because he cannot, but because he knows better. That refusal, that quiet, unshakable no, it changes everything. And most people never understand why. If this kind of truth speaks to you, if you are tired of confusion, if you want clarity about men, about yourself, about what real attraction looks like, subscribe right now. Hit that button. Stay with this. Let's begin. There is a man you have met before. Maybe you didn't notice him at first. He wasn't the loudest. He wasn't the most decorated. He didn't perform for you. He didn't rush to impress. He just was. And something in you stopped, something in you slowed down, and you didn't fully understand why. That was not accident. That was not luck. That was the result of years, of choices, of deliberate refusals, of a man who understood something most people never learn. Attraction is not about what a man adds. It is about what a man refuses. Read that again. Sit with it. Because everything you've been told about attraction has been pointing in the wrong direction. Society says, do more, say more, show more, be more visible, be more available. But the men who draw the deepest loyalty, the men who hold feminine attention without chasing it, they are not doing more. They are refusing more. And that distinction will change how you see every man you ever meet again. The first thing, the first refusal, a man who refuses to explain himself every time he makes a decision. Think about that. Not a man who is secretive, not a man who is cold or dismissive, but a man who has decided that his choices do not require a courtroom. He does not owe you a defense for who he is. He does not scramble to justify his values, his direction, his standards. He simply stands. And that standing, that grounded, unshaken posture, it tells the part of you that has been wounded by inconsistency, by men who shifted themselves to match whatever the room expected. It tells that part of you, this one is different. This one will not bend just to be accepted. And that is not arrogance. That is identity. That is a man who has done the work of knowing who he is. And knowing is not something you perform. It is something you live. The second refusal, a man who refuses to compete for your attention. This is the uncomfortable one. Because somewhere, if you are honest, you have enjoyed the competition. You have enjoyed the pursuit. You have watched men orbit you and felt powerful in that dynamic. But here is what that dynamic actually tells you. A man competing for your attention has not yet secured his own. A man desperate for your acknowledgement does not have enough of his own. And that desperation, that hunger disguised as romance, it will exhaust you. It already has. The man who refuses to compete is not indifferent to you. He is interested, but he will not discard himself to win a moment of your approval. He values the connection, but he values himself more. And that hierarchy, that quiet self-valuation, is what makes him safe to love. Because a man who needs nothing from you desperately can give to you freely. You feel that. You know what I mean. You have been loved by men who needed too much. And it felt like love at first. It felt like devotion. But devotion without self-possession is just dependency with a romantic name. And you cannot build a life on that. You cannot rest in that. You cannot grow in that. The third refusal. A man who refuses to be reactive. The world is loud. Everyone is reacting to everything. Someone says something provocative, and the reactive man rises to it. Someone doubts him, and the reactive man scrambles to prove. Someone withdraws, and the reactive man panics. But the man in that 1%, he does not live at the mercy of the moment. He observes, he processes, He responds when he is ready and not a moment before. That kind of steadiness, that refusal to be moved by every passing wind, does something to the people around him. It makes them feel grounded. It makes them feel held, not controlled, not dominated, but held, like the world has edges again, like there is a place to land, and you may not have had words for it before, but you have felt it. The rare man who does not escalate, the rare man who slows the room down, the rare man who, in the middle of conflict, chooses thought over impulse. You don't forget those men. You measure other men against them. The fourth refusal. This one runs deep, a man who refuses to abandon his standards to be chosen. Let that sink in. We live in a world of negotiation, of compromise framed as flexibility, of men who slowly, quietly let go of what they believe so that a woman will stay. And it seems loving. It seems like sacrifice. But watch what happens to that man. Watch what happens to his energy. Watch what happens to his eyes. The man who abandons his standards to be chosen is building on sand, and you, eventually feel it, that the man you're with has no real ground beneath him because he gave it away to be wanted, and then you stop wanting him. Not because you are cruel, but because the human animal is designed to be drawn toward firmness, towards something that does not dissolve under the pressure of desire. You cannot respect what bends for you. You can appreciate the gesture, but you cannot respect it. The man who holds his standards even when it costs him approval. That man earns something rarer than attraction. He earns reverence. If this is landing for you, if you are nodding and feeling seen in a way you didn't expect, subscribe to this channel. More truths like this are waiting for you. Just press the button, stay in the conversation. The fifth refusal. A man who refuses to chase emotional acceptance from people who have not earned the right to judge him. This one is quiet. This one doesn't announce itself, but you will see it in how he handles criticism. The man who has not done this work will either collapse under judgment or rage against it. Both responses say the same thing. Your opinion has power over me. But the man in that 1% has severed that cord. Not because he doesn't care about people, not because feedback is irrelevant to him, but because he has decided whose voice carries weight. And he built that list carefully. He built it by asking, has this person demonstrated that they are living with integrity? Has this person earned the right to speak into my life? If the answer is no, the words still enter, but they do not land. They pass through. And that kind of emotional discipline, that curated inner world, makes him impossible to manipulate. And a man who cannot be manipulated is terrifying to those who rely on manipulation. But to a woman who is tired of games, he is everything, because you have played games. Not because you are dishonest, but because you were taught that directness was too much, that wanting too clearly made you less desirable, that needing was weakness. So you hid, you performed, you tested, you withheld, and you became exhausted by the architecture of it all. And then you met a man who didn't play, not because he was naive, but because he had decided games were beneath him. He was direct. He said what he meant. He wanted what he wanted without apology. And that directness felt like sunlight after years of fluorescent light. That is the fifth refusal at work. The sixth refusal, the deepest one. A man who refuses to give up on his own becoming. This is where it all lives. Everything else, the groundedness, the steadiness, the standards, the emotional discipline, all of it grows from this root. A man who has committed to the ongoing project of himself, not to becoming perfect, not to some finished, polished version that earns final approval, but to the daily faithful act of moving toward the man he knows he is capable of being. That commitment, that refusal to stagnate, that refusal to say, I am finished, I am fixed, I cannot change. It radiates. You feel it, not as arrogance, not as pressure, but as invitation, because a man who is growing creates space for the people he loves to grow too. He does not need you to stay small so that he feels large. He does not fear your expansion. He celebrates it. He calls it out of you, and you become more in the presence of that man than you would have ever become on your own. That is the real reason only 1% of people understand this, because this is not about attraction as performance. This is not about tips and tactics. This is about the slow, unsexy, deeply private work of becoming someone worth being with. And most people want the result without the refusal. They want to be desired without choosing discipline. They want to be respected without earning it through integrity. They want deep connection without the willingness to go deep themselves. But the man who has done the work, the man who has said no to the shortcuts of the ego, to the shortcuts of approval seeking, that man doesn't have to try to attract. He simply stands, and the right people are drawn. Not everyone. Not the ones who need chaos to feel alive. Not the ones who mistake instability for passion, but the ones who are ready, the ones who have done their own work, the ones who have made their own refusals. And those two people meeting from that place, that is not just attraction. That is recognition. That is the rarest thing on earth. Now, a word for you. If you are watching this, you are not here by accident. You are here because somewhere in you, you already know this. You already know the difference between a man who moves through life and a man who is moved by it. You already know how it feels to be with someone grounded, how the air changes, how your nervous system finally exhales, how your own clarity returns in the presence of someone who has clarity themselves. You know this. You have felt it. Maybe once, maybe briefly, maybe only in glimpses, but you know the difference. And knowing the difference means you can no longer pretend that less is enough. That is both a gift and a burden. The gift is discernment. The burden is the courage required to wait for what is real, to not settle, not out of arrogance, not out of impossibly high standards dressed up as self-worth, but out of genuine knowledge of what is possible. Because what is possible is extraordinary. A man who has made his 6 refusals, a woman who has made her own, 2 people who have both said no to the lesser version of themselves, who have both done the uncomfortable, unglamorous, deeply human work of becoming. That meeting changes lives. That meeting produces things the world needs desperately. Families with real roots, love that does not flinch, children raised with models of what it looks like to be both soft and strong, to be both open and grounded, to love without losing yourself. Do not rush past this. Do not minimize what you just heard, because this world will offer you 1,000 versions of less. It will offer you loud men who mistake volume for strength. It will offer you needy men who mistake possession for love. It will offer you charming men whose charm is a mask for a man who has never once sat with himself long enough to know who he is. And it will be tempting, because charm is warm, because need can feel like desire, because loudness fills silence. But none of those things will carry you. None of those things will grow you. None of those things will meet you in the place where you actually live. Only the man who has refused the easy way can meet you in the deep place. Only the man who knows himself can know you. Only the man who chose his own integrity over your approval can give you something that will still be there tomorrow. So this is not just about men. This is a mirror. Everything you are looking for in him is also being looked for in you. The same groundedness, the same refusal to collapse under the weight of approval seeking, the same commitment to your own becoming, your own 6 refusals, your own quiet, unshakable no to the version of yourself that was shaped by wounds instead of truth. Who are you becoming? Not who were you told to be. Not who did you perform as so that you would be chosen. But who are you becoming when no one is watching, when there is no audience, when there is no reward waiting at the end of the performance? That person, that quiet, real, unperforming person, that is who the right man will see. That is who the grounded man will recognize, because he has met himself too, in the same silence, in the same absence of applause. And he chose himself there, and he will recognize you when you have chosen yourself too. This is the truth that the 1% knows. It is not a trick. It is not a game. It is not a formula borrowed from seduction culture or dressed up in masculine aesthetics. It is just this. The people who do the work find each other. The people who refuse what is easy and choose what is true. They build something that does not break. You deserve that, not as a reward, not because you have earned it through suffering, but because it is simply what is available when you are ready. And readiness is not waiting. Readiness is becoming. So become. Slowly, seriously, without rushing toward the validation of being chosen. Choose yourself first. Choose your own clarity. Choose your own direction. Choose your own standards, even when no one is applauding. And the man who has made his own refusals, he will see you from across a room, and he will know. If this moved something in you, if it shifted something, if it made you sit straighter or breathe deeper or see yourself a little more clearly, subscribe to this channel, not just for content, but for a community of women who are choosing this, who are choosing truth over comfort, who are choosing becoming over simply being chosen. Hit subscribe, be part of this. You will not regret it. And remember, the most attractive thing is not the performance. It is not the surface. It is the refusal to live at the surface at all. Go deep. Stay grounded. Choose yourself. And let what is real find you there.